welcome once again to the MHI Vestas Offshore Wind's Visionary Debate Series. Today we have a very interesting debate in relation to some mega trends of the future, and we have someone from the Copenhagen Institute of Future Studies with us, along with Chris Burns. Those people that are getting their lunch now, if you'd like to come over and join us in the blue area so you can get some food for thought while you're having your lunch, and hopefully we can get some interesting debate happening. One of the reasons why MHI Vestas Offshore Wind decided to sponsor this debate series is we believe that it's always great to be able to have some new ideas and to get some new ideas from outside of the wind industry and some new thoughts from outside of the wind industry and bring those back to us. And then maybe we can have some discussions ourselves, and maybe we can learn a little bit and hopefully progress the industry. Anyway, without any further ado, I'd like to welcome the host, Chris Burns. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you very much. And yes, I would like this to be as much of a powwow as possible. We'll let that, we have an announcement here somehow. Okay. There we go. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like this to be a powwow. I'd like this, there are many different concepts of what the future is going to be between now, say, and 2050. And this is what we're going to be talking about with the futurist, Klaus Kjeldsen. Come on up, Klaus.
Thank you.
It's just you and me, kid. Thank you very much, and I'd like to get you all involved, and those of you way over there too. This is our last chance. We've had a really great series here over this week. On Tuesday, we talked about urban issues. On Wednesday, we talked about energy. And we talked about, on Thursday, we talked about business and manufacturing. And today, we're talking about the future. Where is it going to go? And what is the industry going to look like? And what is energy going to look like between now and 2050? And especially also, we're going to be looking ahead beyond what's going to happen here in Paris next month regarding climate change. What kind of agreement can we expect, and how are companies going to adapt to it? Klaus is one of these guys that talks to top industries and helps to show them the way to figure out where to go, and hopefully some of you might have some ideas. And if you don't agree with Klaus, perk up. Let's talk. Let's hear about it. Klaus, I'd like to sort of establish your ethos so we know a little bit more about this Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies was established by a former finance minister of Denmark who was also the head of the OECD, who obviously decided we need to have an institute that really looks toward the future. And this guy is now carrying the torch. And he's doing this also with a monthly magazine. That magazine is called
Scenario.
Scenario, exactly. And it has lots of people. Take a look at it online. It's also in Trees. It's an amazing magazine talking to people who are looking toward the future, who are shaping the future in business, industry, culture, even a filmmaker I saw. It's quite interesting. So let's look at the future now, Klaus. And how do you see industry between now and 2050 adapting?
Well, I would like to give industry a little kick in the stomach, because for the last 5 years, people have been talking a lot about disruptions, and that has been clear to everybody. But a lot of people in industry think that disruptions is only a B2C thing.
Yeah, like 3D printing, this is going to change everything now. You got to take the long view, right?
Yeah, that's also a very important thing. We actually also do surveys where we operate or measure people's concept of the future. And it turns out that everyone thinks the future is interesting, but actually kind of unintendedly, you can categorize people into 3 groups when they think of the future. And quite a big group of us, we have an idea, unintentionally, we hope that the future will be like in the good old days.
Yeah.
And it seems like a paradox, but we are actually strategically competent in the past.
Right.
So you could say that sometimes the labor unions, they say, oh, if we could get a little help for this tire factory here in France, then we hope the good old industrial society will be back.
Yeah.
And we are so ready for that as a union.
Yeah.
But that is not the case.
Right.
And every day, strategic decisions are being taken, which could have been better if you took in the knowledge that we already have today about what is going to happen in the future.
If you thought it out.
Exactly.
If you thought it out. Let me shoot out some, as I have in the last few days, some headlines. I always like to do this to start out. Don't expect you to answer every one of them, but I think it's very interesting, the developments, even a development we saw here, Siemens, talking about cutting costs with wind power, second generation HVDC grid connections for offshore wind parks introduced in October. This technology reduces the costs arising from high voltage direct current transmission by 1/3. About cutting costs for the power generation industry. Here's another one, way out differently. Making detergent with wind power. Procter & Gamble in the States plans to rely on windmills to provide all the electricity needs of its 5 plants that make Tide detergent, which I grew up with. Apple, here's another one. Apple helping Chinese factories with clean energy, working with suppliers like Foxconn to install 2 gigawatts of renewable energy in China, along with another 200 megawatts that the tech giant will build itself. These are looking toward the future. How are other companies doing this, looking toward the future and adapting?
Well, I think you're actually saying all the right things there, because the future of energy is about cutting costs.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's marketing. And the Tesla is actually a great example of the combination.
Tesla, the car manufacturer, battery manufacturer.
Yeah, exactly. But also due to the fact that the technology of an electric car is really not in the money. It's still, so if you made an electrical Volkswagen up, it's not a huge success, because if you just have a need for transportation from A to B, a small combustion engine is still the best solution. But then if you put it in another level, where it's an expression, it's an immaterial value that you display, a BMW is not a rational decision either. Neither is the Tesla. But here you can drive a really nice luxury car with a good conscience. And when you make wind power into the detergents, it's 50% wind power and 50% marketing. If you really want to drive this industry, we could, of course, hope for global emission. COP21 will take take place soon. But to be honest, my best guess is that we will have to wait at least maybe 10 years for global carbon tax. So in the meantime, it's all about driving costs.
Which is quite much more rational, actually. It makes a lot of more economic sense. Would anybody like to jump in on this conversation now? Either make a statement or ask a question to Klaus. Have him look in his crystal ball, or do you have a crystal ball yourself to tell us what you think the future could be for industry and for power generation, including wind power. Let's move on to another issue of the question of decentralization. And we did touch on this yesterday about factories, but how you have power generation in one place and you have factories in another. Do you see a real shift in where and how we do our manufacturing, adapting to how we generate our power?
Yes, but basically the drivers of decentralization is the fact that we are increasingly automating, and a robot doesn't care whether it's working in China or in North America. But what will decentralize production or reshore part of the production is the megatrend called individualization.
Right.
Because one of the concepts already available is the Nike idea. People want to design their own running shoe. But when they have designed their own running shoe, they don't want 6 weeks for a ship to sail it from China to North America.
It has to be more local.
So they want to wait.
They want to
wait. Basically, they want it right away, but they can wait a few days.
Right.
So the production line of Nike ID is already in Northern Europe and in North America. And of course, energy has also been automation, not 3D printing, but just highly mass customization production lines. And then, of course, cheap energy. And in this case, it was the shale gas in the Midwest and not renewables.
What other megatrends do you see, Klaus?
Well, I think...
And before you say this, I want everybody to know that we still, throughout this 45 minutes, you can come and check out Oculus Rift. If you don't know what that is yet, if you've been in a cave, this is an amazing experience. Please do check it out. You put these goggles on, and you see what it's like to be on the top of a wind generator, a wind turbine. And it's an amazing experience. I've done it myself. It's really great. Yes, we've got a question here. Let's run the microphone over. Micro, s'il vous plaît.
Nicholas Bruno from EWEA. My question is actually, European industry is key, but we have strong competition from China, where especially the wind industry is growing substantially there. We have India there as well, running a campaign called Make in India, where Vestas and many others are investing there for their production. Is this a threat, and how can we, as European industry, combat, fight that threat from emerging markets in order to keep that edge? I assume it would be to focus on innovation and R&D, but let me know what you think.
In fact, Klaus, I've had, just to add to that, I saw online there's a video of you talking about future-driven innovation, saying specifically that Europe is not innovative enough.
No, that's true. And the short answer is innovation, 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 and not selling a product, but selling a service, selling the entire package, because that's where we still have a lead in those emerging markets. But within your industry, there's always, when you have technologies which still are dependent of subsidies, then there's also the need for local contents, local job creation, etc. So it's still very much political driven as well, and that can be hard to predict. That's unfortunately not a mega trend. And then also, if we take a look into geopolitics, there is a scenario where we will have more protectionism. There's a lot of uncertainty outright. And then, yes, the point that you mentioned. Actually, I would like to congratulate wind energy on being one of the few areas where Europe is actually leading. But if we look on innovation in general, then take Apple, Google, Amazon, Tesla, Microsoft, Samsung. None of those companies are European. We are a little bit fat and happy. We are a little bit fat and happy here in Europe. So we really need to get creativity back as in the top of business and innovation capacity.
How can you do that? Do you have much faith in Horizon 2020 that the EU is doing? They're putting billions over the next few years into encouraging companies to become more innovative, giving them the seed money, the Juncker plan, billions supposedly as seed money to encourage that kind of thing. How much faith do you have in that?
The larger an institution, the slower it moves. And the Horizon 2020 is a European concept. It has all the best intentions, but I think the way we have regulated those money, I think we need to change our society towards a more industrial-driven society. Right. Our schools are still designed for the industrial society. Everybody has to know more or less the same. If you have a weakness, you will get an extra class. If you have a talent, then you're just good enough. It's not about evolving. In the future, the world will be so complex. So we have to co-create. We have to bring the best talents, because product is not everything. It's also all the other elements.
Right.
And we have to have multiple talents, and then they have to co-create global winning ideas, because that is another trend that we see. Right. We call it winner takes it all. Increasingly, we see winner takes it all, especially when something becomes more digital. Let me give you a few examples.
Okay, just two.
Yeah, no, you get a few.
You got a question coming yeah.
Good. Okay. Like, take a good old industrial market, the car market. We have 17, 20 global car manufacturers. Volkswagen was for a short while number one, now they're probably number two again. Okay. But you can't see there's one global leader. Then you take a digital market. Who is number two in search engines after Google? Who is number two in social media after Facebook? Who is number two in office software after Microsoft? There is a number two. You know, Microsoft, we love that company, but there's not room for Microsoft in Windows Phone. There's only room for two. So it's a winner-takes-it-all market.
Right.
Now what's happening is...
It's disrupted.
A lot of physical markets will have an information, a service patch, and then they will display the same thing, that the winner will take it all because it's changing so fast. So that could happen to a lot of more physical markets.
Okay. One point I might make quickly about Horizon 2020 is that I do know that the European Parliament is trying to speed that up along with the Commission in streamlining it so people get their money faster to cut the red tape. So hopefully that's going to work. That's what they're promising it's going to do. Anyway, let's get a question over here, please. This is a group of students who are studying, getting a master's in wind power. So this is your future, guys.
Hi, I'm Michael from the European Wind Energy Master Program, as he said. And my question is actually not really about the future of the wind industry, but the future of the oil and gas industry. Because this is a major industry that we're now taking a lot of energy from. And there's been a lot of hope that we're really going to expand and go to a solution in the future where there isn't the oil and gas industry. And what do you see as the transition away from this, and what's going to happen to them in the medium term as we transition, away from it? And are we ready to make this jump? It's still a very big industry with a lot of power, and they're not just going to roll over and let the renewable industry take over.
Yeah, and also, a question with that too is that maybe if we do expect industry to become less centralized, decentralized, could local renewable power generation, like wind, take the place of that or not?
I think that's already the case in developing countries. When you don't have invested in the grid, that's of course a sunk cost. So in developed countries,
you can do it. You can't do it.
It will take a longer time.
Yeah.
But right now, solar and wind is already the cheapest solution in Africa and places in India.
So they can shift from diesel to regenerate.
We still have the storage issue that we need to solve.
The storage issue, yeah.
The oil companies have been fighting, and they will keep fighting. We will not ever run out of oil, if you ask me. We will innovate a better solution. And in that case, in the meantime, gas will play a significant and probably a rising role, because gas is such a good, in combination with solar energy and wind as well. But hopefully, I think that we will innovate a better solution than oil. And to be honest, on a long-term horizon, I'm not sure. I still think that wind turbine has too many moving parts. Maybe in the long run, solar could be. They have less moving parts in the energy production. But at least for the next 50 to 100 years, wind turbines will be here.
Giles of the EWEA, Giles, let's get you in here on the discussion.
Thank you very much indeed, Chris. I'm surprised you haven't told us about the Internet of Things.
Oh, I haven't been asked. That's number 2 point.
Okay.
But I would love to.
Good. Let's do it.
Well, one thing, and I actually touched upon it, that that can actually create a completely new concept. We're used to a lot of industries being oriented in silos, where Vestas is competing against Siemens and all the other players, and all the car manufacturers is playing amongst the others. And that was exclusive resources. If you owned the ship, if you owned the hotel, if you owned the factory, if you had the high street location, then you owned the customer. Now, in the Internet of Things, we don't have exclusive resources. We have inclusive resources. That is the information. And the more information is shared, the higher value it has. So it used to be in a world where I test drove 3 different cars, and then I picked the one I liked. Now I test drive 3 different cars. Then I say, can I play my iTunes library in this car? Can I do Netflix in the screens in the back seat in this car? Can my car communicate with my coffee machine? Because I wanted to make a hot cup of coffee exactly when I'm in the driveway and not a minute earlier. And in the Internet of Things world, everything will be speaking together, and that can change. That will also drive the winner takes it all, because of course also in industrial manufacturing we will be proactive, we will be predictive in service, and all the units will be communicating with each other, and it will be a huge game changer. And on top of that, you have the mega trend called acceleration and complexity, which means that markets and customers are constantly changing faster and faster, so companies have to be strategically more agile. And it's very hard for companies, because they are hierarchies, they change slow, to be agile enough. That means that the entire way of structuring industrial production will change. We will go from hierarchies and value chains into more loose value networks where we are working together across borders, but all entities in your former value chain has to be world-class, and no company can be world-class. So you will see an increasingly amount of sourcing. You will open up. You will not do the entire value chain inside one company. And then there will be a lot of winner-takes-it-all global leaders, and you will have to focus on your core. And when I was at university 20 years ago, we learned about core competence. You could outsource everything which wasn't your core. Now in the future, we will even collaborate on the core. We will innovate with our partners. So it will not be outsourcing. It will be win-win, more trusted relationships with shared goals, shared risk, where we together bring our value network forward.
Can you give us an example of that? Is that happening now, or is that the future?
It's not a new thing. A very good example was the Danish toy manufacturer Lego, for instance. They were in a crisis. Then they saw what was disrupting them. That was digital video games.
Right.
Basically, then they said, let's hire some developers for Billund. Well, the cool developers will never work in Billund. And they should have collaborated. Then they got a new CEO, and then they actually cut down to their core.
Right.
And then they made a relationship with Lucas Entertainment on Star Wars. They made a relationship with Merlin Entertainment driving their theme parks.
Right.
And so they found world-class partners, and now they have a more thriving business than ever. And it's the same thing in a lot of other areas.
Would anybody like to comment on that or question on that? You know, we filmed the promotional video, the promo for this debate, just outside of Brussels at the Colruyt the center for the warehouse center for that, and they have several wind turbines. Could you see this, Klaus, as a symbol of what could be in the future in other places where you have local power generation, even taken upon by a specific company? We saw these other headlines as well, but how much do you see this in the next 10 years, 20 years, that companies just generate their own electricity?
Well, I have to say I'm not a big fan of the Tesla wall, for instance, which is one of the solutions for decentralized power. I think it's a step back. We will make the entire system much more vulnerable.
Could you see maybe a collaboration between different companies to generate in a certain region, maybe a mini grids to do that?
I think there's no question that power will become more decentralized.
Yes.
But I'm not sure that there are some people out there right now who really promote this idea and think it's because it has the capacity to solve. You can have the local storage as well for green energy, but I'm not convinced yet, to be honest.
Storage is an issue. What other mega trends do you see down the line for manufacturing, for industry in the next, between now and 2050?
Well, the search for strategic agility and the way of moving from value chains to value networking, being more agile, that is one thing. One thing which will also revolutionize industry and society in general is, we mentioned the first part of the equation, the Internet of Things, but the next thing is the automated decision making, or the artificial intelligence.
Right.
What robots and outsourcing was for blue collar workers, and artificial intelligence and big data will be for white collar jobs.
White collar, right. How much are you seeing this now happen?
Well, if you look at some of the best solutions, like the IBM Watson, Watson can already now analyze 200 million pages in 3 seconds and generate a meaningful response. Let's put Watson into health, Dr. Watson.
Right.
Health is an area where 50% of the knowledge is outdated in 5 years. Then we know a better solution. And the entire amount of knowledge in that area doubles every 3 years. So what are the chances that your local doctor has the latest treatment regime or know the rare diagnosis?
So e-health is a very important development.
In health, but also the lawyer, in accounting, in banking. And the big data, all the data, everything has a digital footprint. So all the data we generate in our manufacturing process can be analyzed, and we can see patterns. And in some areas, what we really need is the managers who are smart enough to take that information into business. And that will really be, and that is why then we have the layer of information on top of the physical product. Then we are selling a service in a complicated world, and then we can be the global winner.
Okay. What about the trend that some people find quite troubling is of moving manufacturing offshore to other places?
Yeah.
But you're talking about collaborative. Do you see a
Yes.
trend more in that direction where there's collaboration between
No, but I
Europe
think
and,
the reason,
and the other places where they
the
manufacture?
reason we outsource was due to difference in labor costs.
Yeah.
And a robot is taking the same pace. So actually energy prices will have a higher influence than labor costs. Wages are rising higher in China than they are in North America and Europe. So the gap is constantly closing. And then if we move into this more mass customized, then we want the proximity. But the reason we set up in China is because we have a new global middle class. It's a very attractive market in every aspect. So it's still there is an advantage in labor-intensive jobs to outsource for low labor costs. But in a not so far future, it will be more proximity to markets, attractiveness of markets, energy, as it also has been historically.
That are manufacturing that is more responsive to regional tastes or regional demand, right?
Yeah, that could be part of it. Yes, definitely.
Any other questions? Any other statements? We got just about another 10 minutes or so. Would anybody like to jump in on this? I think it can be quite troubling to some people looking down the line how much disruption there's going to be to people's daily lives. How much are we going to adapt to this? How much is energy going to be a part of this? How much is this decentralization idea going to be? I mean, are we going to see by 2050, are we still going to see major industrial centers, or could you see this slowly move in other directions?
Yeah, it will be more like societies don't die, they just fade away.
I mean, the Ruhr and the Essen complex was built with coal, and the coal is gone.
Yeah,
right?
but you could
coal
say,
production.
like, we are not a farming society, but we have never produced as much food as today. The old industrial clusters was surrounded by the production facilities. The future clusters will be about the knowledge. And then you could basically decentralize the production where the market is, because it will be much more automated. And then, for instance, in wind energy, there's still a thing about local content, and there's also the thing about the sheer size of the products, that it makes sense to produce the wing decentralized.
I have another question, unless there's someone out there, is, yes, Joss. You're from Copenhagen. We did talk about cities earlier this week. It would be good to get your take on how advanced they are in terms of becoming a greener city and adapting from an industrial level. Yes, Charles.
Klaus, I'm partly playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Good.
But I don't get this point you've just made about the centralization of knowledge. The whole point about the internet and data and digital is that it's completely decentralized.
Yeah.
And one person can talk to somebody else and switch data across the other side of the world. So
Yeah, but
what
you
is the
still
centralization
you
of
still
knowledge?
have the clusters, and this is actually also the answer to what you were talking about with cities, because right now urbanization is probably one of the strongest trends globally. And we see these cities, they work as black holes. They are sucking in all knowledge because they are also generating much more value. And in the future, when you have to be world class in all elements of your value chain, you need to bring all that knowledge together to constantly innovate in a faster and faster pace. And yes, I know that we can have video conferences and stuff like that. And even if you could have a hologram, would you be living in a rural area? Maybe for a short period of your life, but we also like other things about the cities. So, for instance, in Copenhagen, as you just mentioned, you have the most valuable company in Denmark, Novo. They have their R&D in Copenhagen, and then they have the production in Kalundborg, because that's where the labor is cheap, and this is where the bright heads are. And still, the reason that now it shouldn't be all Denmark, but we have the critical mass, we have an industrial cluster in wind power, and that is also part of the success. The same thing in Silicon Valley, and a lot of companies have tried to replicate Silicon Valley. It's hard. It hasn't succeeded. Maybe a little bit in Stockholm, a little bit in Munich, but it's still about clusters of knowledge generating the innovative output.
If I might follow on that, on the you have Denmark leads in wind power, right?
Yeah.
And it's all about the grid too, though. I mean, you're going to have to deliver that to manufacturing.
Yeah.
How is that working there, and how do you see the future there for Denmark and other countries in trying to deliver that power to where it's got to be?
Yeah, but that speaks for the decentralized solutions, because and that is of course a part of it. And the energy is not that easy to transport. So of course that's what wind power can offer. That
so we need more
solutions.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm
but
sure
I think
you
there's
believe
a general.
you need more grid. You need more grid for that, right?
Yeah, there's a challenge, especially if we want to, for instance, go into complete electrical cars instead of combustion engines. Then we need much more grid capacity if they need to charge at night, all of them. So that's an area of investment.
What do you think about the concept of storage is a question, but why not just recharge all these cars? That could be a way of storing it, right?
Then we need the smart grid, and these investments, the technology is possible. I still think we need a breakthrough in battery capacity and charging, but hopefully it will come.
And fleets, vehicle fleets of companies.
Yeah.
How much do you see a future for electric cars there? I mean, I know some companies have done that in a big way.
That's how we're going to drive them. I think right now all the major car manufacturers are already experimenting with self-driven automatic cars, and that will be a complete game changer, and that will also make it much easier, because then it knows, okay, I'm taking a 20-kilometer trip for this customer, and then I'm going to charge. And that will, if you take transportation, it's an area which has been at a standstill for 50 years. If you took a guy who died in 1970, then he basically went from horse and carriage to moon landing. Then you dig him up and bring him back to life, and you say, welcome back. What do you think has happened in the next 50 years? And then you say, I'm so excited, I can't wait. And the answer is basically nothing. We fly at the same speed. Flying some of the major European airlines, we basically fly the same flights as well. We are not driving faster. We are slow steaming due to emission on freight.
Right.
The trains traveling about the same speed. We have had the chance to do magnetic railways, high speed, but we have invested in welfare societies instead of infrastructure in that area. The next thing is the automatic car can come one car at a time. Soon, they will have the third lane at the highway, only automatic car. They will be speeded up to 160, only 5 meters apart them, less wind drag. You can do your email. So basically, this could also decentralize the urbanization, because you could commute from a further distance in a faster pace, and you could answer your emails on the way.
That
could solve the storage problem if you charge those cars at night.
That's right. Yes.
My name is Martin. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm also part of the European Wind Energy Master. You already touched upon it a little bit. You mentioned Silicon Valley and London. And also all the companies you named that were the number one, for example, Facebook and Tesla. These are all very young companies, basically from the last 10 years or something like that. What do you think is the role of innovation in energy from an entrepreneurship point of view? Or do you think that the bigger companies will make the most innovation?
I think in the future it's not necessarily big that beats small, it's fast beating slow. And even though it's very good to be big, and I was talking about the winner takes it all, then you have to be big and fast. And if you think that if you become too fat and happy with your own innovation capacity,
which we've seen in many cases, right? That's
which we've seen in many cases, but for instance, Google are big, but they are also fast, and then they recognize their own limitations. So they buy a lot of companies. They buy Android. They buy Facebook does the same thing. Then they buy Instagram. Then they buy WhatsApp.
Which are all startups.
Yeah, but they constantly look to say, well, they recognize that they could get tunnel vision within their own company.
Concluding?
Concluding.
Will it be the bigger companies or the smaller companies?
I think I think it can be both if you have the right idea and you are fast enough, because this is also the classic thing in this is called the innovator's dilemma, and Kodak is the best example. They even had the right idea, they had the patents for digital camera, but they couldn't cannibalize. And it's the same thing in the car company industry that we mentioned previously. Why Tesla is such a young company? Why isn't it Volkswagen or Toyota? They have larger R&D budgets, and they have been working in this area for 20 years. But they are too slow. They say, let's make a hybrid. The world isn't ready for a true electric car. And Volkswagen said, let's put some batteries in the Golf or the Up. So they are not cannibalizing on their existing business. And that is why a young company like Tesla can disrupt from a completely new industry. And Tesla also did not recruit people from Detroit. They recruited people from Google and Apple and built a completely new car. So I think there's a lot of options for disruption, either within or without, because there are also a lot of cases of industry leaders still leading their industry.
Is it not maybe more the case where you are a large company, you can take a longer view, you have more investment capability in lunging towards some kind of new technology or driverless cars, for instance?
If you have the right spirit, then actually the network society can also solve that with crowdfunding, if you really have the right energy. And then one other thing when we're talking entrepreneurship, it has never been cheaper to set. Just 20 years ago, you had to rent an office, you had to buy a car, you had to buy a server, you had to buy an ERP system. Today you can have all the server thing in the cloud.
The threshold is much lower.
You can lease a car. You go into an office hotel. So all the infrastructure needed. What you need is a really, really good idea. And if the idea is good enough, you could even crowdfund it. Or you could say, if I can get 20% of this in crowdfunding, then maybe this bank will give me the rest. So in that way, it's really, and I will not trash talk the Horizon 2020, but the really turn on is in our brain. We need to change our mindset in that area.
Anybody else would like to comment? Yes, sir.
Hello. Yes, I would like to ask something regarding...
What's your name and who are you?
My name is Nikos, and I'm a PhD researcher from TU Delft.
Okay.
And I would like to ask regarding wind energy and mobility, because you said about transportation.
Yeah.
So far you discussed only wind energy and batteries. But of course there are also other ways to store, such as hydrogen. And I think in terms of charging time, it's a lot faster when we compare it to batteries. So I would like to know what is your opinion, because already the technology is there, also hydrogen electrolyzers from water to make also wind turbines, and we could solve a large part of the intermittency of wind with hydrogen. I'd like to know also your opinion about it.
So say this guy heads a company and he comes to you and he's asking you this. What are you going to tell him?
Well, I think it's a storage problem, and we should not fix our minds on batteries. Let all the technologies compete. The one who can solve the problem win. Will the future car be hydrogen-driven with a fuel cell, or will it be battery-driven? We don't care. Or will it still be a very, very clean combustion engine running on biofuel? That's also a possibility, that the flexibility in actually fueling a combustion engine is the most sustainable way. So this is just competition between competing technologies.
Anybody else?
But I agree, there are other attractive technologies, and one thing that we could say, that if we do everything with batteries, then we become dependent of lithium, and lithium is mainly distributed currently. There's a lot of lithium globally, but right now we get it from Middle America, and then China has some stuff of it. And oil has been quite widely distributed, but the Arabs had a little bit more than the rest of us, and that has led to a lot of problems. So are United States ready to completely transfer their mobility into the hands of Chile and Peru and some other South American companies and rely on lithium? Probably not. Then they will have to find their own lithium, and it's probably there somewhere. It's like the rare earth metals. They are also everywhere. We just don't need to. We don't want to have the mess by taking them up. That's why we let the Chinese do it.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, sir. I think we had you commenting the other day on storage. Let's hear it.
You.
Yeah.
I'm Theo Holton. My company is Wind Farm Analytics. my other company is Green Hydrogen Consulting. So I just wanted to comment on hydrogen. I mean, the great thing about hydrogen is it won't run out, you know.
Exactly.
We can electrolyze water, rainwater. We can use it in the hydrogen car.
Yeah, but we are
as
waiting for you
hydrogen.
guys.
And we can use the oxygen as well,
Yeah.
pure. And the water goes back into the natural water cycle. So yeah, I think the hydrogen with its superior range and 3-minute refill time, far superior to battery electric. So we should back hydrogen transportation. There are many hydrogen cars in existence. I've driven quite a few of them, and also conversions of petrol engines. But yeah, my point would just be that I think a major reason why it's so slow to progress humanity is because of vested interests. So, you know, also countries like Germany and Britain have vested interests in conventional engine manufacture, internal combustion engine. So it's jobs, it's factories. So this is why it's so difficult to get progress. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. As a futurist, you know, how much do you tell a company that you really got to watch out for the influence of politics here, or can business act on its own without worrying about that?
Yeah, because what we are all waiting for is, for instance, a global emission tax, or at least an emission tax where China and US.
We'll see where it goes next month as far as an agreement whether they can put their heads together.
So far, there has been no willingness, and I doubt it. I think it's already, the conclusion is more or less already out. There will be no, they will say the same, that this is really important, but they're not willing to pay. Right. So I think, referring to your first question, I think you are completely right. Your technology has a lot of advantage, but it's still not in the money. And I think European has showed some commitment in emission and committing themselves, but we're 6% of the global population and we're 11% of the emission, and so far we are the only ones doing something. So I think maybe it's simplification, yeah, but I think the solution that will solve this emission issue, because even though we have an axe hanging over our head, the politicians are not willing just to push it a little bit forward. They are only talking about it. So I think we need the real solutions will have to be not only sustainable from an environmental perspective, but also from a financial perspective. And that's the solution that we're waiting for.
We really do have to wrap this up, but I have one last question that I'm just itching to ask is, as you advise companies about the future,
yeah,
what do you tell them when they come to ask you, what should be my energy mix in the next 10, 20 years? What should it be?
Well, we don't do what we call predictive analytics. You should talk to the financial analysts, and they can tell you a little bit about the stock price. If they're really good, they can tell it in 3 months or in 6 months. If they do it in 3 years or in 6 years, they will be guessing. So what we do is, there's a lot of things that we're certain on. That's the mega trends, that's the trends. But there's also a lot of uncertainty.
But energy prices, you're not going to be able to look in a crystal ball and say, that's it.
No, if I was able to do that, I shouldn't be a futurist. I should be an investor. But of course, climate change is real, and sustainability is a mega trend. And from where we started this discussion, from a marketing perspective, consumers will be driving this. The German politicians can try to help the car manufacturers, but consumers and the world, we have a mega trend called democratization. Consumers have a lot of power, and we demand sustainable solutions. So if they are there, they will be promoted.
That companies have to respond to that.
Yeah, companies have to respond, and all major companies. Basically, that could be the next thing, that when we have the global leaders, then Apple just set up a server park in Denmark due to the fact that we could provide them with green energy. We actually have a thing that we say that some corporations are bigger than countries. Google wants to cure diseases in Africa and things like that. So can IKEA be a trustworthy company in the B2C market without having a complete, and they could be the next customer for a company like MHI Vestas. Now it's not British taxpayers. Now it's very, very big corporations.
Great. Well, Klaus Keltzen, thank you very much. This is the last of our MHI Vestas Visionary Debate Series. I think we had a lot of good talks over this week, and I hope we can do this again next time. Thanks very much for joining us. And if anybody wants to try the Oculus Rift, you got your last chance now, standing on top of a wind turbine. It's just like it, really, in a windstorm, in a rainstorm. Check it out. My name is Chris Burns. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good.